From what the Republicans and Trump's MAGA people are saying, they are starting to blame Zelensky for continuing the war. That's unfair and not true and not accurate. And what's really happened is that in this one, bust up in the White House, you have seen the United States appear to realign itself away from its alliance and towards, it's like its axis has changed. We are going to, as reporters, wait to see, is America going to be more pro-Russia and pro-whatever, spheres of influence? I don't even know where this is going.
I don't know about you, but everywhere I went this weekend, I just heard people talking about this.
If you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
It doesn't get any easier to listen to that, actually, does it, without getting angry? I think many people felt that over the course of the weekend. How do we interpret what happened there? And also, what's going to happen next? Let's get the views of perhaps the most famous foreign correspondent in the world, Christiane Amanpour, CNN's chief international anchor. Christiane, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning to you both.
You've covered an awful lot of events in your career. What do you make of it now when you think back to what happened on that day?
Well, Stig, most of all, I've covered war and eventual peace sometimes. Sometimes there's peace, and I've seen what happens in order to actually cement peace, and I know that there has to be backstops, security guarantees. You can look around the world just in since the 90s when I started. So that's a given. There will be no peace unless there is some kind of security guarantee and some kind of backstop. The other thing I think is incredibly important to realize from that conversation and from what the Republicans and Trump's MAGA people are saying, they are starting to blame Zelensky for continuing the war. That's unfair and not true and not accurate. And what's really happened is that in this one, bust up in the White House, you have seen the United States appear to realign itself away from its alliance and towards, it's like its axis has changed. We are going to, as reporters, wait to see, is America going to be more pro-Russia and pro-whatever, spheres of influence? I don't even know where this is going. But what's so incredibly important is what Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron, and all the European leaders who came to London this weekend have started to do. And that is step in and try to pick up these pieces, try as much as they can to bridge the rupture in the transatlantic alliance and to, for their own security, help Ukraine. You just said, what kind of a country do we want to live in? And what kind of a world are we going to live in? And that's the big question.
I'm very struck, I don't know if you are, Christiane, because you'll know more about this than I do, how little is talked about what Putin might have to concede in all of this.
Exactly. So Trump, at one point, just sort of off the cuff said, and yes, Putin will have to make concessions. That was over the last week. But we haven't heard any details. And frankly, you raise a very important point. I haven't heard, and I don't know any European leaders or even Americans, have they heard that there is actually a detailed peace plan or draft of a plan that the Americans have taken to the Russians? And what is Russia's view? Most people believe that there isn't a detailed plan. I've heard it said that the Americans are basically trying to feel out whether Putin and the Russians are even interested in the kind of deal that Trump has been proposing. But the question is, and you're hearing it from Moscow right now, Putin has always indicated, and now they're saying, no chance of any peacekeeping, and those territories that we have taken, and even those that we have not, but that we want, and that we've annexed in absentia, so to speak, we want those, and those are non-negotiable. So this is already a hard line. Additionally, you have heard, and I'm sure you've been reporting, there's the media in Russia, there are the Putin allies in Russia, the Putin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. They have all said, this is now, the EU is an enemy of the United States. Zelensky is the one who's the warmonger. But more importantly, they've said that what Trump is doing aligns with Russia's vision. This is not a comforting thing to hear. No. And this is a massively important moment.
And I wonder whether the world will find it acceptable, Christiane, for what amounts to, say we just get to the point where it's the status quo. Russia keeps its territory that it's gained by an illegal invasion. It's committed war crimes. It has killed hundreds of thousands of people. We know the vast litany of charges against Putin. It feels very realistic now that it could end up with that all being pushed to one side and the status quo as it is now being preserved. And I wonder whether, for the sake of peace, will everyone just have to swallow that?
Look, it's very difficult to know what kind of a peace deal Europe and Ukraine will present to President Putin and what it will look like and what concessions Ukraine will have to make. And then it's difficult to know whether they go for a ceasefire and, as you indicated, freezing the current lines for a period of time. Some have said to outwait Putin, to wait him out. Because nothing is likely to change in terms of his aims while he's still there. But whatever it is, a ceasefire or some kind of meaningful peace, it needs to be guaranteed. There is no question about that, absolutely no question. You can talk to all your defense officials in this country. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, has said we must all be on a war footing, because if Ukraine is allowed to totally lose and Russia gets its maximalist aims, which it also wants from diplomacy, i.e. it doesn't want a peace plan, it wants a victory in Ukraine. It doesn't want a Ukraine even with its own army, never mind NATO. It doesn't want a sovereign democratic Ukraine. So it wants to subsume Ukraine. It wants a neutral Ukraine. Unless Russia has changed that view, which is held not just since 2014, but doubled down on it since the full-scale invasion of 2022, it's very hard to see where this is going. And that's why the US, well, I don't know what the US is going to do, and it's a real shame the United States has moved itself away from Europe. But Europe is going to have to probably step up and continue to arm and reinforce Ukraine until there is somebody on the Russian side as well, who will agree to some kind of honorable and just peace where both sides have to make concessions.
And that feels like a very, very long way indeed at the moment. Christiane, what a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for joining to us.
Thank you, Steve.
That's Christiane Amanpour, there, CNN's chief international anchor.